ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Loss of Lieutenant. Tonight it is episode 165 and our first back to basics of the year, and this time we are tackling a pretty big one. It's the defining element of Infinity. It is the automatic reaction order. Tonight I am joined by my fellow hosts Jordan.
Hello.
And Nick.
Hello.
Two people that can definitely ARO very well.
You must be this tall to ARO.
Alright, before we get into the episode, we do have some housekeeping. First off, if you would like to listen to our live studio recordings, you can go over to patreon.com/lossoflieutenant. You can gift us 3 Australian dollary dues a month, and you can hop in, you can yell at us, you can give us advice, you can ask us questions during the live recordings. If you are interested in purchasing some fancy Infinity and or 40k and or Blood Bowl and or any other dice that Baron of Dice sells, you can head over to Baron of Dice and use code LOSS to get 5% off your order. We now have Jordan's favourite part, which is the events.
Oh boy, do we have another European one on here? I always love when they get upset about the way I pronounce their names.
Do it.
Oh, we do. Oh boy. Okay, so first off we have the Riga satellite in Riga, Latvia, from the 25th to the 26th of April in 2026. The mission lineup is Hardlock, Corporate Appropriation, Provisioning, Area of Interest, Akyle, Interface. Congratulations not fucking with one of the missions, Europe. Good job.
Did you say a Kyle?
Yeah, Kyle. A Kyle.
A Kyle?
A Kyle.
Ugh. Okay. you got the European city right, but then you like... Yeah. Okay.
It's a Kyle interface.
That's a good lineup, by the way. I like that lineup.
It is actually. It's a really good mission lineup. You've got Hardlock in there. You know it's going to be a good mission.
At least it's round 1.
At least it's round 1. You know what the weirdest part is as well? Is you've got Provisioning an Area of Interest on day 1 and day 2. So it's the last mission of day 1, the first mission of day 2.
That we will say, if the Riga satellite TOs are listening, make Area of Interest and the Provisioning radial deployment sites the same.
It's a really good idea. It helps a lot.
Yep. Much easier for table assembly.
Yeah. Following on from that, we have BrisCon 2026 in Brisbane, Australia, from the 2nd to the 3rd of May. The missions are TBA. I believe currently they have a player cap of 12, but if 12. They get enough interest immediately, they may be allocated more spaces. So if you are in the Brisbane area, or if you are in the Queensland area, or if you are a very dedicated New South Welshman, it is a good excuse to head up to Brisbane for a fun weekend away. And leading off from that, we have the cherry on top, the crown of the Infinity narrative event scene worldwide, ARCfinity 2026, Melbourne, Australia, 2nd to the 3rd of May, same weekend as BrisCon. It is a narrative event. It is 200 points of Spec Ops. The missions are fully custom. Choose which corporation you will sign over your allegiance to. More information will be released as we get closer to the event.
I'm very much looking forward to that one. There is something on here called the Sunbelt Slam, Nick. In the notes, there is something called the Sunbelt Slam. Unless that's
BrisCon. I believe that's the alternative name for the BrisCon event.
That's because they play in a shed. Anyway, let's move on to the main topic of the night, which is the automatic reaction order. It is why, arguably, we play this game. It is the reason why you cannot sit down during a game of Infinity, and the reason why your back hurts so much after a 2-day event. So, why are we talking about AROs, Nick?
Well, as I said, it's a defining element of Infinity. Without it, it just wouldn't be Infinity. The October update from last year, and also the N4 to N5 changes have greatly changed and like spiced up how AROs play in the game. Their options, their power balance. So at this point, N5 is nice and stable. We've got the October update under us. So good time to discuss where the current state of AROs are and how they're working out for us. Part of that change between N4 and N5 was going from presenting a very solid powerhouse castle ARO presence. That's been now broken up a fair bit, and now we're looking more at smaller teams that have a kind of sequential delaying tactics. So instead of killing your opponent's models to attack their order pool, you're making their orders do less and forcing them to spend more orders to do the same thing, to burn away their order pool, which, as we know in Infinity, is one of the limited resources we have to play with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, fire teams, again, not as powerful. We're now looking more at the duos for ARO presence because that's the minimum to get a special die. Special dice have greatly changed our AROs because now, while their accuracy hasn't necessarily decreased, and I'd say overall it's probably increased just because it's easier to get a special die than it was to get a burst bonus in N4. But the lethality of them has gone down. That leads more to delaying your opponent by winning a face-to-face roll but not necessarily killing them, to slow your opponent down and give them less for their orders.
Absolutely. One of my pet peeves that I can't even believe we played N4 with this is linked shotguns. Everything and its mum having 2 shotgun templates. When you go back and think about it, was like, oh my god. Like, we played games where there were like 20 shotgun templates on the table. And
It was like playing into a Morat player and going like, how many templates does that Kaitok put on top of me? It's like, I don't know, like 7 probably.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Like that and just Dotarazi.
Mm-hmm.
I remember having one of my opponents pause and request the math to go through why I was laying that many chain rifle templates down, because it was a Dotarazi Harry's.
Yeah.
In that, we also have... Oh, go on.
Glad those were over. Sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. I'm glad Ghoul Arms don't have linked shotgun templates anymore.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, special dice, all that good jazz. I think Jordan wants to go on a rant, so I will give the floor to Jordan.
Oh, it's not even. It's just if you are a new player who started playing in N5, or you're a returning N4 player, and this is sort of the first go into N5 you've really had. I cannot understate how much of a change like AROs as a presence have gone through in the transition from N4 to N5. Primarily because of how broken Sixth Sense was on 4-man teams. The fact that it sort of warped the game as much as it did and made taking favorable fights into link teams as difficult as it could be, especially into stuff like your Steel Phalanx or your Morats. It really cannot be understated how much of a good change CB have sort of done in terms of like where AROs are at now. Like you can see it where like stuff like Kamau teams are no longer like these weird unwieldy 5-man teams. They're now like a bunch of Undertow duos, which is sick. I can't believe we played in N4 with a Fusilier missile launcher that was BS 15 and had 6 cents. Like, the number of times where I heard someone say, yeah, the Fusilier missile launcher just didn't die and I lost, 70 points of models to it is horrific. So, again, never has there been a better time to get into Infinity, specifically because while AROs are more difficult now and you can't sort of just brain off kill thing, I think the game is in a much better place because of it.
100%.
AROs have become more diverse.
Yeah.
Now you can do more things with them, but you can't do as many things with the same arrow piece.
Yeah. MSP 1
So
plus
you
6
have to
cents
pick
is
and
no longer.
choose.
MSP 1 plus 6 cents is
Yeah.
no longer just broken. Like, it is no longer
Yes.
just the best combination of equipment you can have on a model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh god, I was going to say something and then I forgot.
Tristan.
Oh, I was going to say, like, especially with the like the Fusilier link, like I understand people's apprehension of just playing standard tags, because back in like a year and a half, 2 years ago, if you just whiffed your shots and the Fusilier hit you twice with a missile launcher, the tag's just gone.
The tag is just dead.
The tag is just gone, and you're like, why did I spend 80 points on a tag?
Why was the Fusilier missile launcher on the same ballistic skill number as a Pano tag?
Yes. Yep. So 5-man links, very situational. Duos are the way of the game, and I'm loving it. I'm still loving it. I was loving it a year ago, and I'm still loving it.
It's excellent.
All right, let's go through the basics for those of you who haven't played much Infinity. So, what is an ARO?
So basically, these are actions that you get to take being the reactive player during the active player's turn. This enables you to respond immediately to stuff that they do. It means that every action that you take as the active player can have immediate and contested consequences. You can't just, I want to say the 40K stereotype of I'm going to go get lunch. Just roll my saves for me.
Yeah.
Does not work. One of the quotes they have in the book is, "In Infinity, it's always your turn." Because whether you're the active player or the reactive player, you're participating in every order of the game. And that brings about the very high level of player-player interactions we get in Infinity. You can't play Infinity without your opponent. You both have to be talking and communicating, and AROs are one of the main things that make that high level of interaction part of the game.
It's actually really funny because Jordan might be able to say something on this, but in the latest editions of 40K, they've added things like heroic. I don't know if you know what a heroic intervention is and stuff like that. But it's basically like a reactive move for a dude or whatever. And people are like, oh my god, this adds so much level of skill and like, expression into the game. And we're like, yes, this is Infinity all the time.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, there's still a fair bit of like, I'm gonna go do my thing, you just sort of do your thing. But yeah, there is more player interactivity coming into the game. I've heard people complaining about it. Like, it's like they don't enjoy when their opponent sort of gets to do stuff to interact with them and they don't get to sort of like map out their turn. Like, that's something I've heard about some Infinity players, where they're sort of like, oh, I've mapped out N5, and it's like, no, you haven't.
Yes, no.
no, you haven't.
All right. When can I declare an ARO, Nick?
So, as the reactive player, your troopers, models, markers, whatnot can declare AROs. So it's going to be when an enemy trooper activates inside line of fire, zone of control, or hacking area, or it's affected by a template weapon or a comms attack. Mind you, template weapons don't necessarily mean templates that do damage. Or like anything else in the game, if something says that you can, then you can. You have to declare your ARO in response to the active player's first skill of an order. So whether it be a long skill or a short skill. The only exception being if you did not have a valid ARO to their first short skill, you can trigger an ARO against their second short skill. Though that's not terribly common, but it can happen.
Yep.
So one thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, go on.
Oh, I was going to move on to the next, but if you had a comment. So one thing that I've seen people, for some reason, approach it as a more complex situation than it is. And that's hacking an ARO. Or more importantly, hackers and hacking areas in ARO. The first important thing to remember is that zone of control and hacking area are not the same thing. They may overlap quite a bit, but for AROs, they are two distinct triggers. So, had two situations to walk through with this. So if you have a non-hacker reactive model inside the active model's hacking area, nothing special at all. Same normal requirements for declaring AROs: zone of control, line of fire, template weapon, comms attack. So just being in their hacking area doesn't change your ARO options. Most of the time, the ARO will come up as a reaction to the comms attack if they hack you through their hacking area. So in that case, nothing special, regular ARO requirements. If you have an active model inside the reactive player's hacking area, normal ARO requirements. They're inside your hacking area, you can declare an ARO. So those two I've seen for some reason get fuzzy, but they're not. It's just both of them. Basic ARO requirements list. You really don't even have to refer to the hacking section for that. All of those are stated out in the ARO requirements. The one that gets fuzzy in hacking is when you have a hacker inside an enemy's repeater range. In this case, it's a complex set of interactions that exist because HoloMask exists. So if you're inside an enemy repeater, all enemy troops are now inside your hacking area. However, any order or ARO that you declare through the enemy repeater fails and becomes idle if the target is not an enemy hacker. So basically, this allows the possibility of a holo-masked hacker. Because if you had, for instance, a holo-masked hacker, then you could move them on their first move. The enemy hacker would have to declare an ARO, and if they don't, then the enemy hacker who's holomasked could declare their second skill as a hacking program, and it is past the time at which the hacker in the enemy repeater range could have declared an ARO. Basically, if you have any local players who play a faction that has holo-masked hackers, and I can't come up with any off the top of my head, you need to walk through this. If not, don't worry about it. Actually, can either of you think of any holo-masked hackers?
Tiangao?
Yeah, Tiangao.
Okay, so there is one. Yes.
I think there's a couple.
Unless you come across holo-masked hackers, don't worry about that interaction.
And in which case, just who cares if you play it wrong?
Yes.
I don't know if you mentioned it. Another thing is if you have a HI sitting in an enemy repeater and your opponent activates a hacker, you don't get an ARO until they target you with a hacking program.
Right.
So it's not like you go,
non-hacker,
reset. You go, hold on. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Non-hacking model in an active hacker's hacking area. Nothing special. You still have to qualify for any of the basic ARO triggers.
Yes. And I think that's kind of what you mean where hacking area does not equal zone of control. So you do not automatically get an ARO just being in the hacking area. Alrighty. Burst. Oh boy, it used to always be burst 1, but now it's getting a little dicey. So, in ARO, everything is going to be burst 1 unless it says otherwise. Even if you have more than one dice, you cannot split burst. So things like TR bots, things like neurocynetics, you are not going to be able to split burst and other things, which is going to allow opportunities for counterplay in that regard. Special dice are separate.
Yeah, special dice don't count toward burst. So any limitations on burst, you don't consider special dice until after that's dealt with.
Yes. It is not burst, it is just basically a reroll. We have plenty of examples of more than a +1 burst AROs, which is like total reaction bots. There is a lot more neurocynetics profiles in the game now. Suppressive fire is a very specific example where you're going to get 3 dice no matter what.
Unless you have a special dice.
Unless you have special dice. And then martial arts level 4 or level 5 is going to give you the +1 burst, but CC attack +1 burst will not do that in ARO.
Yeah, it's a good one to mention here. In this case, it's martial arts that specifies any bonuses from martial arts apply both in active and reactive, whereas the stat CC attack +1 burst doesn't have any stipulation about that, so it only works in active.
That doesn't apply to things like CC +1 damage, just applies to things like CC +1 burst.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, I haven't seen it for a very long time, but we have enhanced reaction, which sets your burst at 2. And then Zero Pain is very specifically a effectively burst 2 reset, which isn't very common either, I think. I think it's on like 3 or 4 profiles in the game.
It's been like creeping up, but yeah, it is still very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's starting to pop up in a couple places, but you're right, it's still, it exists rather than it's this ghost from a previous edition.
Yes.
It is still weird. It is still weird enough to where when someone goes, oh, you see like a Zero Pain profile, you're like, oh, I forgot that existed for a minute there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's the only hacking program that is not on any hacking device by default.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll believe you.
It exists only as an upgrade.
All right.
Yes.
What skills can I use in ARO, Nick? I've already got this wrong today.
So the 2 big ones that you could almost always default to are dodge and reset. One for physical and one for hacking or comms attacks. You've got your BS and close combat attack, assuming you're in a position where you can do a close combat attack. Discover, place deployable, but that does come with the rider that you have to have line of fire to the model you're AROing, which we will discuss later because that is a whole interesting risk reward.
There was, I remember there was like an entire era, I think in N4, where I think it was Trent very specifically, was arguing that you could place deployable outside of line of fire. And that was his like white elephant for like half a year.
I'm glad that didn't catch on.
If it didn't specify that in the description.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Forward Observer can also be done in ARO. Reload, which was a sort of shock to at least one of us here, can be done in ARO. We had a short discussion of this before we started recording. The situations in which you would reload an ARO are pretty narrow. but it is good to remember if you run a bunch of Panzerfausts. Lookout is an ARO, and I've also put alert in here. It is not an ARO. It's kind of a pseudo ARO. It does a lot of similar things, but it's not an ARO. Lookout and alert are probably the two skills in Infinity that have the most confusion between them. Just in trying to remember which one is which.
Yeah, trivia night for more info about that one.
At least half of you got it wrong.
Yep.
And there is a handy dandy chart if you're like, what can I do in ARO? The chart tells you what you can do in ARO.
Oh, I left something off when I was transcribing this. Most hacking programs can be done in ARO.
Most hacking programs, not all hacking programs, notably white noise, cannot be done in ARO.
Oh, that would be so lovely, but it is not.
Yes. And for those new players, throwing smoke and things like that counts as a BS attack, so you can throw smoke in ARO as well. Anything with fizz that is a BS attack, you can do. Okie dokie, Nick. Take us on the journey.
So I've decided to try to separate these and at least give maybe something to remember them by. So lookout, as in lookout, sirs. You're trying to call attention and get another model's attention. So this is an ARO. The trooper declaring it has to have line of fire to the enemy model or trooper that's declaring the order. And it basically grants an ARO to every model in your army. So any other model on the table of yours, of the reactive player, can roll dodge at -3 to change their facing. It does count as their ARO, so you have to declare which troopers are doing it. And that means models that are doing something else have a different ARO can't do that as well. But it does allow that dodge to be face-to-face. So if you have a situation where a model is getting shot in the back from outside of zone of control and wouldn't normally have an ARO, if another model sees the attacker, they can declare lookout and give the model who's being shot in the back a dodge. At -3, but hey, it's face-to-face as opposed to nothing.
It's the tech that wins tournaments.
Yes. Probably the model that I've used most for lookout are helper bots.
Yep.
Because no one cares about helper bots. And often if they're trying to go quickly and go move, and the helper bot sees it, look out, my entire army gets to do facings. As opposed to alert, which I try to think of as I'm alert to my surroundings. It is the model themselves that is being aware of their surroundings and is staying alert to them. This is not an ARO. It's declared during the order conclusion step. So after you've done your armor saves and all that fun stuff. The requirements, either the trooper, so both, the trooper didn't activate during that order, either using an order or an ARO. And the trooper or an allied trooper in its zone of control was targeted by an attack. There's no roll needed for this, and it just allows them to change facing. So this is basically, my buddy next to me just got shot. I'm going to turn around and look at what shot him. This is also what allows models who are shot from outside their zone of control in the back the ability to turn around if guts didn't come up. Notably for this, as opposed to guts to change your facing, this only requires you be the target of the attack. So if someone shoots you from outside your zone of control in your back, it doesn't matter if they whiff it, you still can alert and turn around.
Is there still stealth as a rule to cancel out the alert?
I don't know where stealth would actually come up with alert. Because It's the model
Sorry,
or
not-
a
not-
friendly model
not-
is targeted by an attack.
Not stealth. Silent.
Silenced does not prevent alert. It just makes it more difficult to dodge if they're inside your zone of control, but in your back arc.
Yeah. Continue.
Okay. The interesting thing that I did not know until I made this slide is that alert is not restricted to the reactive player. Both active and reactive players can declare alert during the order conclusion. And the wording of it is written to include both active and reactive activations. So during your active turn, if a model is shot back in a face-to-face, your models that you are not activating that are in zone of control can potentially declare alert to change their facing, even during the active turn. The chances of this coming up are pretty small, kind of like reloading as an ARO. But it's one of those interesting things just to kind of have in the back of your mind and remember that you can potentially get like a quarter of an order for free by having a model nearby shot back.
Yeah, it's also kind of like if it's your last order and you may be like, ooh, I messed up kind of situation. It also does require you to take a hit though, doesn't it?
No, only to be targeted.
There you go. That's cool.
So you can you can win the face-to-face roll and still have models nearby alert because it only requires your opponent targeted you.
That's great. If anyone ever remembers it though, but yes.
Right, yeah, it almost seems more like to do it in active would be correcting a facing mistake from earlier in the turn.
Yep. Okie dokie. Notable skills that are not usable in ARO. We've mentioned white noise. White noise is a big one. There is also, so you can use fairway in ARO from memory. We should delete Toha, but that's a different thing. You cannot censor in ARO, but you can discover and you still get the +6. You cannot doctor engineer. You can medkit and gizmo kit, but the only practical use of that is the nano espionage classified. And the brand new smoke variant of N5 disco balls you can shoot in ARO since it is a BS attack. However, it is never a face-to-face with what you are blocking since the smoke doesn't bloom until the very end of the order. I don't know if there are any big other ones that you cannot do in ARO that aren't very explicit.
It's an inclusive list of what you can do.
Yeah.
But I think these are probably some of the ones that you might really want to do in ARO, but they're not AROs.
Yeah, I think like the confusion doesn't so much come from like what you can do in ARO. It's more like, does it cause a face-to-face to occur?
Yes. Yeah.
One thing, can you use the special trait of BS attack guided in ARO? So for example, if the I think it would be like ignore mimetism or something like that. I can't actually tell because the Infinity Wiki is down for me.
The first line of BS attack guided is during the active turn.
There you go.
Hey.
So you can't use BS attack guided to ignore the Mim 6 of whatever model you're shooting at.
I had a feeling there was a rider like that in there. I just couldn't remember.
It's very good that they put that in there.
All right.
Okie dokie. Now we are going to move on to some general archetypes of AROs. Again, these are not going to be hard and fast. They're mostly
Vibes.
They're a lot of vibes, and they kind of indicate what you're going to do with it, how you're going to do that thing with it, and how you're going to approach dealing with it, I think.
Yeah. And there is going to be a ton of crossover of like, this thing is a hard ARO, but it's also non-lethal, or etc.
Anything could be a hard ARO if you want to define it that way, and anything with a template could be a soft ARO because it's looking at a corner with a template.
Yeah.
So,
on turn 3, if you stand up every trooper in your army,
yes.
a bunch of hard AROs.
Yeah. So specifically, we're going to look at hard AROs, we're going to look at soft AROs, and we're going to look at non-lethal AROs because in the greater community, I think they are criminally underrated. So we're going to start with hard AROs. These guys, you want to face with them. They're going to be using typically multiple dice, so special dice. They might have mimetism. They might be hidden deploy. You want to force your opponent to deal with it. I think that's kind of the big thing. A soft ARO, I feel like the opponent comes to you and it's kind of a roadblock, whereas the hard ARO is, I'm trying to keep you all the way back there in your DZ and keep you there. Often sacrificial, yes, they are there, like most AROs, to delay your opponent, to eat up orders, to prevent them from doing what they want to do. And oftentimes they could be recoverable, could not be recoverable, but typically you're in the understanding that they are probably dying the turn that they are AROing.
Yep.
A big thing, and this kind of makes a hard ARO as well, is they have to actually be threatening. It can't be a 2-wound warcore that's shooting a combi rifle. Like, it can't be a dude that's shooting a combi rifle at you because you go, that's not really that threatening. It has to be something that...
Like an example, a combi rifle is not going to be a hard ARO against a Yodam.
Yes.
The Yodam won't care. It will just move, and go, there might be a small chance I take a wound, but I've got 3 of them.
Yep. And it forces your opponent to deal with it. Your opponent isn't just going to walk out in front of it and try and, let's say, cross the boundary in a single order and take the hits. They're going to want to fight it. They're going to have to fight it, or they're going to have to deal with it in some other way. The
main way these strip orders from your opponent is by forcing that face-to-face. Because if they didn't have to face-to-face, they could move.
Yes. Yep.
So assuming a 4-4 model, if they move, that's 8 inches. If they move and then face-to-face, that's 4 inches. You've stripped half an order of them approaching you and getting toward the objective.
Excellent way to put it. All right, so we've kind of made some categories. These are incredibly vibes-based, but they just kind of give a general idea of kind of how we approach and use these types of units. So the first one is, as Nick has aptly put it, the order sync. This is the guy that's 2 wounds, that's high armor. He's in a duo or a harass to get a special dice. They have a weapon, they have a HRL, they have a missile launcher, they have a sniper rifle. They can fairly reliably be taken out with tag levels of firepower in 3, 4, 5 orders. Oftentimes, the real good order syncs are going to have remote presence and be very recoverable. And their primary role is just, every turn I live, I tax you 3 or 4 orders. And there is always the risk that you lose that face-to-face, and I'm getting way more value than statistically I will most of the time. Anything to add?
Yeah. The other thing they could do, because these are going to be 2 wounds or potentially more, they can go up on ARO until they take a wound and then duck and then be an active turn gun in the next round.
Yes.
Um,
And I think oftentimes people underestimate the resource they have in terms of units like this. So, like, if you have a Katakuri, you can ARO with that guy. He has 3 wounds. He has remote presence. He might have maybe not the best gun. He might have a Panzerfaust or something like that. But
He's immune total.
he can really effectively
Yes.
absorb a bunch of orders. And even if your opponent wants to shoot at it while you throw a Fizz 11 or Fizz 10 dodge, the risk that you're taking there is virtually none, and your opponent is slowly whittling away their ability to do the mission. Units like this are going to be things like the Stormbot. The Griffin is a really good one because it's one of the only ones in the game that you can reliably 5-man link and has MSV. So it is very much an N4 of your kind of piece. Same with the Suryat. The Vistral's a very big new one, which is throwing 2 dice or 3 dice by itself. It has mimetism and it's very recoverable. And then the classic creme de la creme is going to be the Hollow Man. 4 effective wounds, missile launcher. It's sub 30 points, so the investment isn't massive. And it's
Truest bouncy castle of all time.
it's threatening enough that you can't ignore it, and you have to deal with it if your opponent places it in a place that you need to go. I think these are probably the most common. These feel like people who played N4 and feel very comfortable making N4 lists. You see a lot of these. Like, you see a lot of people taking Stormbots because, it's a burst 2 HRL and reactive. You see a lot of people taking Hollowmen. Hollowmen are great. They just feel like a comfort piece.
Yeah. It's very much I need something here, and this is just going to give me the juice.
And oftentimes they're not a very big investment.
No.
These are examples of the hard AROs of hard AROs. They do exactly what you need. No frills. They'll just sit there and drain orders because your opponent can't take a free shot.
Yep.
And oftentimes, aside from the placement and deciding when to give up and either go prone or let it go unconscious, there is no skill requirement from you. There is no pressure to do anything with it. It's just, tell me when I roll my 2 dice and let's see what happens. So it's again like almost the comfort thing of I don't need to stress too much.
All of the mental load of this is on your opponent. Your opponent is the one who has to manage the risk, manage the mental load of how am I dealing with this piece? And you're just sitting there with your 2 click clacks in hand going, yeah, 14s.
Oh, yeah. I love doing that, man. I love sitting there with my 2 dice looking at my opponent and going, are we doing this? Are we doing it again and again and again? Unlike,
it is truly one of the best feelings in Infinity.
Yeah. When you've got no mental strain, it is the best. Unlike the next category of hard ARO, it is going to be the gear check. And oftentimes the gear check is going to involve hidden deployment. Since hidden deployment models often have mimetism sticks, we are talking about models that stack negative mods to the walls. The biggest one, which everyone's going to be complaining about for the next 6 months until it gets nerfed,
foreseeable future,
it is the Swistle. The Swistle is probably, aside from maybe Chusa, the biggest gear check in the game, I think. If you don't have smoke in the right position, or if you fail 2 or 3 smoke rolls like Jordan did, oh boy, it is a problem. So you've got the HD ones like the Swistle, like the Blink, like the Shujay. You've got linked ones, which is my...
It's such an insult to Phoenix that he's not on the list, but fucking Blinks are.
100%. 100%. I've got the linked Mem 6 guy in the center butt.
Blinks are fucking trash.
Blinks aren't trash.
I'm such a hater.
So, a truly tournament level list is going to need solutions for units like this. more often than not, Mim 3, you can dice through it. So if you're rolling 4 or 5 dice, you can kind of just go, yeah, I'm on lower numbers, but not too lower. I just need you to roll bad once, and then I've solved it. Mim 6 is a lot more dicey, especially when a couple of these units are going to be having more than one wound.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for us, I think, to give definitive plans and advice on how to deal with HD AROs, because it often comes with a lot of experience. It's a lot of knowledge of your opponent's faction, knowledge of points missing and slots missing. It's knowledge of even the table and the design and your opponent and where you think they've placed it. You can do
or like an easy shorthand, or what I try and do at the very least. Like, this is what I did against Tristan at CanCon. Is I know most likely there's going to be a Swissel. I know that a lot of the strength of that model comes from its initial pop out, like when it initially shows up on the table. So long as you're careful moving around models to not give them the opportunity to splash damage multiple pieces, it's on them to decide when they're willing to like exploit a movement of yours.
Mm.
And if you go into the game knowing you're most likely trading probably like a 1 wound shitter to like expose wherever the Swiss Guard is, that's worth it for you.
100%. I think the best thing you can do is hop your opponent's HD model on your first impetuous order.
Yeah.
Like, that's me going, oh, thank God. Sure, I lost a Datarazzi or I lost a
Absolutely.
Varangian, but I know where that guy is now, and like, I can make plans around that.
Once like the unknown becomes known, it becomes a whole lot less scary to deal with. Like, once Tristan revealed the Swiss Guard at CanCon, I was like, okay, I know exactly where it is. I know how to deal with it. I know how that if I miscount my Shaolin Monk's orders, it'll kill the Swiss Guard, and that'll cause a fucking rollback that then causes the most stressful part of the game to happen.
With hidden deploy, one thing that I typically approach it, like I said, you have to kind of know your opponent's faction, do kind of some quick mental math in your head. Do they have a points gap in there that's roughly a hidden model deployed size? Is just go over to their side of the board and think, like, if I had a Swissel, like, where would I put it on their board side?
Yeah,
because there's usually only like 1 or 2 things that you can look and go, like, it's either in one of these 2 places.
Yep.
And I can be careful from those.
Yep.
The other thing is to watch if it's telegraphed by them being very careful about lines of fire from a mystery position on the board. If they keep checking lines of fire from a very specific position where nothing exists right now, there is a good chance that maybe where their hidden deployed model is.
There is also the sometimes random helper bot on a rooftop with nothing else.
The random helper bot that has no earthly business being where it is.
In saying that as well, your opponent can know this and then do the opposite and just put a helper bot up there to fake you out, and then it becomes he said, she said, he said, she said. Like, it just goes round and round and round and round and round.
Yeah. So outside of like the hidden deployment arrows, just a Mim 6 guy with an obnoxious gun. So that's like your Cenobite, your Phoenix, like anything linkable like that. That is the gear check of gear checks. I think going to any Infinity tournament for the next like year, you still need a plan to deal with the Mim 6 asshole on ARO with a heavy rocket launcher.
Absolutely.
Because it is just there are so few ways to profitably fight into that without tricks that you need to figure out. You need to have a plan. You need to have a model to deal with it. If you're playing like vanilla Pano, are you playing a Bolt duo to deal with it? If you're playing if you're playing Yujing, what's your plan? If you're playing JSA, what's your plan? Because you can't like just blender, you can't CC blender a Cenobite or Phoenix.
Yes. Yep. You can like preemptive smoke if you're kind of very, very scared. You can you can kind of, if you can try to ignore them. You can attempt to put your opponent on the back foot through doing the mission more than they are, which gives them less opportunity to use their big scary pieces. Ultimately, you can't kind of just go, my best gun is an Orc HMG, and if there's a Cenobite, I either win or I lose. You definitely need more to it than that, and you will definitely see them all the goddamn time.
And if you're on the other side of this, so if you're the player with that piece, like a Cenobite or a Phoenix or a Swizzle, if your opponent is spending orders to move around your piece and you're not getting to shoot with it, that's a good thing. That is, they are spending orders they would otherwise not be forced to spend to avoid dealing with your obnoxious ARO piece, and it's making them doing the mission harder and is potentially giving you more ways to do the mission more effectively.
Absolutely.
So don't get discouraged if you're not shooting with these pieces.
Yeah, 100%. People don't want to fight a Swiss Guard, like, at all. All right, let's move on to lots of dice. We are talking about things like the TR bots. We are talking about things like the, what's his name? The Crux Knight, even.
Yeah, Crux Knight.
Anything that can be linked and have an extra special dice. Also, I'm guessing this is also for things like suppressive fire, with lots of dice.
Helots is probably the big one that you left off the list.
Helots, absolutely. I might have thought Helots was going into a different spot, but that's it. When you're rolling multiple levels of dice, or like lots of dice, it's basically just crit. Like you can just crit fish, and a certain amount of the time it will work.
Well, sometimes they Sierra drone bot crits your hack tower on 2 successive orders.
Yeah,
3 times in total. Yep.
Well, when you get to like TR bots, or especially the HMG TR bots, you're getting up to like 18.5% crit chance because you're rolling 4 dice.
Yep.
And at that point, it doesn't really matter what the rest of the roll is. That's non-trivial to your opponent. They have to consider, like, they could just crit me, and it's not just this trivial, like, 1 in 20 chance. It has to be weighed into the count of order efficiency of there's a decent chance that they will crit me, even if I will succeed at the armor roll, or at the armor saves. But that's going to eat orders.
Yeah, even though I think because it is so much easier to sort of like neg 12 the HMG, you are still better off with the Thunderbolt, even if it is a slightly lower chance to crit.
Yes, yeah.
We are Thunderbolt lovers.
Voice cost and Swick cost, and
we are.
I think
we are in fact a Thunderbolt Pro podcast.
I think that's the big thing actually, is the cost. Like the opportunity cost for that cheaper Thunderbolt is insane, and like you look at it on paper and it doesn't seem great, but when you put it on the table, like I'm surprised at how often it overperforms. Like,
yeah, it helps. Something I think it does as well is it helps mitigate your expectations, because you see a lot of people with like a HMG TR bot, like, and they think it will just fight the world. Like, yeah, it's 4 dice, it's a HMG, it's gonna do great. But like, and then it doesn't, and they're like way more disappointed in it than they should be.
Yeah.
But with the Thunderbolt, you're like, yeah, it's 3 dice, it's PS6. Like, yeah, he's gonna do his best, and he's going, yeah, beep boop, I'm here for you, boss. And you do not have like these weird overhyped expectations on it. So whenever it does do well, you're like, hell yeah.
Well, even though the HMG and the Thunderbolt have very similar range bands, that only going to 0 and not -3 on the Thunderbolt, means that a Thunderbolt TR bot can go on a rooftop and it doesn't care about restricted range bands.
Yeah.
Whereas the HMG doesn't really want to go on a rooftop. It wants to go on the ground level and have a nice long, but not the whole board
Yeah.
line of fire.
And like, even though we are calling this like a crit fishing ARO, there are some factions that really don't like playing into a TR bot. Like Shazvasti, if they aren't playing like a Sphinx or a Guilo, are sort of like, what I need to like dedicate some real resources to this.
I would
Like Sheskin versus Sheskin versus a Thunderbolt TR bot is 4 dice 15s versus 3 dice 11s.
and that's if they're in good range.
Yeah.
If they're in bad range, it's 11s v 9s. And you're like,
Yep.
oh, I just wasted 3 orders and Sheshkin took a wound. Oh.
Yeah. Like there are some factions where it is just like, oh, this is like a real concern.
Do you think that if you could smoke shoot a TR bot on 2s or save, let's say, 2 orders and shoot them on 11s, what do you think is worth more? I'm kind of the mind that if the TR bot can still hit me, it's not worth it.
If I'm shooting it with something that has multiple wounds, I will just take the 11s. If I'm shooting with something that has 1 wound, I will shoot it on the lowest number it can be on.
That's fair.
Is what my rule of thumb generally is.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Bit of risk mitigation. I love it. And then, yeah, don't forget about suppressive fire, by the way. Coordinate suppressive. Yep. A Morlock with an assault pistol is just sitting there throwing 3 real shots at you, and you're like, I can't ignore this 6-point little dude. Especially because he also puts you on worse numbers. So he's crit fishing. He's putting you on worse numbers, which means you're less likely to kill him. And all of a sudden, again, you've spent 2 or 3 orders trying to kill a Morlock. Maybe he goes down on the 3rd order, but the guy's like, damn, that was so worth it.
Yeah, I had at CanCon, I had a Rushi with marksmanship into suppressive fire do like actual work over the weekend.
I'm not surprised. Especially since marksmanship counters the 0 range band of the suppressive fire.
I've recently been discovering the joys of suppressive fire X-Visor.
Yes. Yep.
Because that's a short range TR bot.
Yep. And you can do it with a lot of things, and you can do it with things more durable. You can do it with weapons that are way more scary than a Thunderbolt.
There are like a wild number of like dudes with X-Visors in the game now where it's like it's actually potent.
Yep. And then I get my dude with an X-Visor and a viral rifle, and then I go, ha, brah! And then things explode.
I feel like there was a time in Infinity where a X-Visor was either you were throwing pitches, you were a guy with pitches, or it had no earthly business being on the profile, like an intruder multi-sniper.
Yes. All right. So, yep, throw lots of dice. Be really good at throwing lots of dice. I kind of see this as some people might be like, I don't like the odds. Like, I'm really just against the numbers. I would strongly urge you to try it. It's almost bringing me back to like poker odds, where it's like I have, let's say, 5-1 odds to win, but the amount of money I'm putting in is only, let's say, 1/10 of what I would win if I did it. So in the long run, I should do this every single time because I will win money in the long run because I'm making more money than I'd be losing on average. That's kind of what TR bots feel like to me. Like on average, a tag could just delete it in a single order. That's fine. But in the slight chances where it doesn't and it double crits a hack tower, I'm like, this is sick.
Yeah.
All right.
It's low investment, but like a high potential outcome.
Yep. The lethal weapon. These guys are carrying the big guns, oftentimes with multiple real dice, and it's the true risk reward. Do I need to fight this? Is this necessary? What will happen if I lose this fight? Oh no, my guy exploded, or my my what's Ivory's HI called?
Oh, the Dalfei.
Oh no, my Dalfei took a crit and exploded. Oh no.
Well, with these, like, they may not be quite as accurate as just your run of the line heavy infantry multi wound ARO pieces, but they hit so much harder and have the potential to do multiple wounds that the failure risk against them is losing like a tag.
It's what's not on the list. So what we have on the list is like the Tank Hunter portable autocannon, the Triggerman, Shusa neurocynetics, even a Kahu like turn 2, turn 3. Most tags, because they have the multi HMG with the explosive ammo in reactive. One thing that kind of embodies that well, I think, is like Daylami. Daylami, low investment, BS11, but if you miss, if they hit you or if they crit you, that's 4 saves, AP. Not a lot's going to live through that. And you're like, oh, did I need to kill the Daylami, or was I just trying to take an order off the table?
Yeah, that's a really good example to put in this category.
As we can see, a lot of these things are blending together. A lot of hard AROs are going to have good guns. But things like a Tank Hunter portable autocannon, like that is a step above like a HRL or even like a sniper rifle. Like it really is just like I delete you kind of gun. Okie dokie. Moving on to the... I'm on higher numbers than you. These are units that are like the Bolts, Atalanta, Lasiques, the Zayden, and even Miranda. I know Miranda's was very popular at the beginning of N5. I'm not sure if she's still popular, but potentially she still is. So
Depends on where.
Yeah. So these guys are going to be 95% of the time guys rocking marksmanship and or MSV. It gives them a very natural, obvious counter in White Noise and Albedo. But if you don't have that in your faction, or if you don't have that in your list, there is the potential that you're just going to have to raw dog fight Atalanta hitting you on 18s, or a Bolt hitting you on 16s, or something along those lines. For this reason, because it's very much I'm leaving it up to the dice, it's probably good to include a plan to deal with units like this, because you don't really want your units going down in your turns against things like Atalanta or Bolts.
Yeah, these are kind of the opposite to the gear check, where the gear check is stacking negative mods on the opponent. The higher numbers than you, like, they're stacking positive mods on themselves and they're ignoring negative mods from the opponent. So that, like, they may not be rolling a great number of dice, but when your target number is 16 or 18, suddenly your opponent's got a decent chance of rolling 2 or 3 dice and going all successes, but under what you rolled.
Yep. Yeah, like, I suppose you can get close to it. You can, again, stack negative mods, whether it be BS attack -3, whether it be MIM 6 against an MSV1 model, whether it be White Noise or Albedo or something like that. I find that generally you can smoke a lot of these. Like, obviously, you can't smoke Atalanta, but things like a Zayden or Miranda, you can smoke them. Oftentimes, that could be the best, because the way to winning isn't to take risky dice. It's to take the non-risky plan that's more guaranteed to work very often. What do you think, Jordan? Ooh, go on.
Okay. So sometimes if it's just an MSV1, the answer is smoke and dodge. It's not the best, but it's not ideal, but sometimes that's the best thing you can come up with to get past them.
Yeah, like the because like the defining trait of the majority of these, other than like the Triggermen and technically Tusa, is that they are just these sort of like one wound guys for the tags. Like there's usually some form of mimetism or like etc. But yeah, like you're on a high number, but you really don't want to lose the face to face, so you need to be careful about where you put them. I think they were better. I think they were a lot better in N4, where you could reach like higher numbers. Like I remember when Zaydens were BS18.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was fun. Yes.
I remember when bolts were like whatever they fucking got up to, wherever Atlanta got up to. It's a lot fairer now. I think you see a lot less of these, other than I think Tristan, you're a big Laseek enjoyer.
I do love the Laseek. The Laseek is very bolt-like, and you see bolts all the time.
Yeah.
You probably see Atalanta fairly often now that Chusa isn't in the faction.
Yeah.
If someone played OSS, I imagine we would see Miranda.
Oh, I mean, you see her outside in like the other faction she's in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like this was definitely better in N4, but I think there's still play here. I think they are very much you need to know what you are doing, and especially for stuff like bolts, which usually form teams that you want to do multiple things. You need to be pretty careful about like how you're implementing it. I think if the ones that lack mimetism, you need to be especially careful with.
Aside from certain models like potentially TR Atalanta, a lot of these guys are potentially attack pieces more than they are ARO pieces.
Yeah.
Like I definitely know for me, I'm only using
attack piece. They're an attack piece that has an alternate role, other than maybe like a Zayd and missile launcher. That is just an ARO piece.
Yeah. As again, this is all vibes based.
Yep, super vibes based.
One way you can also look at them is they're an attack piece until you kill their counters, and then they're an ARO piece.
Yep. I think a lot of the hesitation comes from a lot of these guys are always like most of the time they're one wound. And there's very much a like, ooh, if I mess up and it goes down, I'm going to feel really bad. Whereas you have the Stormbot or the Griffin or whatever, and it's like, I'm comfortable AROing with this because more likely than not, I'm gonna have the choice on whether or not it dies or goes prone or anything like that. All right, how do we make the most of hard AROs?
I guess turn one, they're mostly about just reducing the efficiency of your opponent's order pool, and yeah, hopefully they survive. But a lot of them are going to be sacrificial. Recoverable is good, although that now you're spending your orders to recover them. Mostly, it's going to be preventing or slowing your opponent's ability to leave their deployment zone and get to the objectives. Turn two, they're going to be potentially getting stronger as you strip the tools to counter them from your opponent. So like the gear check hard AROs only get better as you remove MSV from your opponent's army. Because you slowly increase your odds in every fight that you take with them.
Yeah, especially with stuff like the high number AROs, those do just get better as the game goes on. Because once your opponent's down to shooting at them with like dudes with combi rifles, they essentially just establish supremacy over the entire board at that point.
Yeah, like once your opponent's highest ballistic skill is down to 12, Atalanta can run the field because they just can't stack numbers high enough anymore.
Yep.
For turn three, it's a little different whether you're first or second player, just because, like, for first player, at the end of your turn three, if it's not holding a zone or an objective, it is now a sacrificial ARO piece.
Yep.
It will never generate an order anymore. It has no use other than to die to steal orders from your opponent's order pool.
Yep.
Whereas second player, it's a little bit more, depends on the state of the game. Like if you're up at the end of turn 2 as second player, then you probably want to be more liberal with your AROs during your opponent's turn 3 to try to keep them behind. But that's kind of a hard one to really make any recommendations that don't have a whole bunch of caveats about the board state.
I definitely feel like the first player turn 3, everything stands up has just been becoming a lot more prevalent in N5. I don't remember it happening a ton in N4, but in N5, it feels like almost every other game I play now, it's like at the end of turn 3, it's like, and everything stands up.
Yep.
Good luck.
Yep.
Wait, that's your coordinate order, suppressifier.
Yep.
Even having these guys revived and having one burst at the end of turn 3 or something like that, it's still it's still a lethal shot.
Well, because the risk reward has changed by turn 3. When your opponent only has 1 or 2 specialists left on the board, that risk they have from taking a face-to-face with a grunt and a combi rifle is not the same as it was on turn 1.
Yep.
They can't necessarily afford to lose that last specialist, because if they do, it's game. So any face-to-face you make with them is going to be a nail biter on their side, because it is game for them if they lose. And for you, it's something that you weren't going to get anything out of in the end anyways.
Absolutely. So, strategies against hard AROs. Obviously, a very simple one is line of fire denial. Throw a smoke in front of it, throw a disco ball in front of it. This is a temporary solution. More often than not, it's a less order-intensive solution. And it's probably a fairly common method in N5 now for quite a few factions, with the prevalence of linked disco balls. Smoke less so, obviously, but disco balls having a +3 range band and having the reload ability and the multiple shots per order is very, very good.
I think smoke just has been better in N5 as well, because those MSV AROs have gotten like substantially worse.
Yeah.
So now you are seeing like smoke is sort of able to run a table again, which is cool.
Yep.
I would argue that this is not necessarily a loss of orders. This could be the more order efficient way, depending on how many models you want to move through that ARO corridor.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
So yeah, if you are trying to move multiple models across a region that's watched by an ARO, and you can spend 1 order to smoke it, everyone then gets to move.
Yep.
Whereas if you're trying to take ARO fights with every model, that's going to end up being the more order intensive.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Cautious move. It's a classic. People forget they can do it. Just remember, tags, rems, vehicles, and bikes cannot cautious move. And remember that we are getting a lot more 6-2 models as of late, so cautious move has kind of had a little silent buff throughout the progression of N5.
Yeah, cautious move on a 6-2 model is not losing much, and it has 0 risk. So
it doesn't have 0 risk. I'll disagree with you there, because you can't pre-measure where you're going to finish. You can measure your zone of control. Technically, you don't know where 6 inches gets you from that zone of control. I know, perhaps more casually, we put down an 8-inch ruler, and you can see where the 6-inch mark is, and you go, yeah, that's fine. Technically, you're not supposed to have that, but whatever. But there is still a slight risk.
You put out an 8-inch ruler and you check it to 6 inches.
You technically can't. You can check your zone of control. You can't check half your zone of control. You can't check 3/4 of your zone of control.
Yes, but the measuring instrument has all of them marked.
No, I know, but technically, what you're supposed to use to measure your zone of control is not supposed to have those markings on them.
Oh, okay.
You're supposed to know 0 and 8. But we play, like, we take some liberties and we play, we play the game. We go, what, I'm 3 inches away from the zone or whatever, because it makes sense. In that regard, you could measure 6 and you could go, I don't know if you'll be able to see me or not. And there is like a risk there of I declare cautious move and then something shoots me, or I declare cautious move and they reveal something from hidden deployment, in which case can't you?
You cannot hidden deploy ARO a cautious move.
What if it can see it at the start?
You cannot see it at the start because it was in hidden deployment. It wasn't on the table.
God damn. That seems broken.
Yes, that has been sealed up. You can no longer hidden deploy to cancel a cautious move.
Okay, fair enough. Very fair. Fair enough. All right. So there is slight risk to coordinate order. Anyway, sorry, cautious move. Moving on, we have coordinated order, and this is one of the more fun methods of dealing with like a Cenobite or something along those lines. And particular factions in general, particularly Ariadne factions. So if you plan and build for it, you can have 4 threatening pieces, shoot at a single model at once. Remember that special dice doesn't count as a burst, so the non-link members still get their special dice and still roll 2 dice with them. And even a simple combi rifle, marksman rifle, Panzerfaust, anything like that. There are a lot of factions out there that can coordinate order quite well, and you can only respond to one of them.
Unless you dodge. In which case, good luck. But in that case, now suddenly you've removed the risk from the attack.
Yes, absolutely. Bring a better gun. The glorious Pano way. When dice are rolling hot, just having a big gun, just sometimes AROs just disappear, and you really feel like you didn't do anything special. You just rolled really well. Infinity is a pretty lethal game, and if your opponent rolls a couple of average armor saves, then you can pretty much kill anything in a single order if you try hard enough. I find with these guys in particular, well, specifically hard AROs, most commonly the solutions are shoot it or smoke it. I feel like that's the most common. Anything else is either you trying to be clever or very niche or situation specific.
Well, there's the last one, and let's just go a different way.
Yep.
Sometimes you can look and go, I don't have the tool to fight that, but if I go around the other side of the building, it's going to take me 2 more orders, but I don't have to deal with that.
Yep.
And that might be the best solution for you.
Yeah, I think all of us have said before that winning games is about, taking as little risk as possible with the potential to still, do the objective and win. You don't have to take this fight to win the game. Like sometimes you're like, I don't need to take the fight. I just throw the smoke or throw the disco ball and I run and press the button. I don't need to kill the thing. It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. If anyone has any opinions on hard AROs, make sure to put them in the chat and comment on YouTube. Which means we will be moving forward from the hard to the soft. What is a soft ARO, Nick?
So where the hard AROs are ones that you're forcing the opponent to engage you on your terms. Soft AROs are more ones that the opponent gets to choose how they engage them. These are going to be things that you're going to try to place in the path of your opponent to alter their behavior. It's going to change, mines are a very good example of soft AROs. It's going to change the risk management aspect for different paths to cross the table. While it doesn't force engagement, it now tells your opponent, this is the shorter path, but you have to deal with a mine that you're going to have to dodge or figure out how to turn off. Or you can take the longer path and just spend more orders. They tend to incentivize your opponent into longer paths if they don't have the tools to deal with it. Sorry, train of thought just ran off there. Yeah, they do tend to be much lower risk for the reactive player than hard AROs, but they also don't tend to be as lethal because the active player gets to choose what engages it and when.
Yep. They are definitely gaining in popularity. Things like Goudan, things like Auxilla are definitely massive in the game. I remember when Moonrakers came out for Vanilla 012, they kind of completed the faction almost because 012 didn't really have any units that could delay the opponent. Everything in the midfield wasn't in camouflage, and they couldn't link team back then, so they had no high burst reactions except a TR bot. So oftentimes it was a lot of I'm throwing Varangians at you, I'm sacrificing pieces to keep you out of my DZ. As soon as Moonrakers came along and you had 2 mines and 2 shotguns in the midfield, that kind of
heavy shotguns too.
Heavy shotguns. They kind of completed the they immediately became auto include too, basically.
Yeah. Every vanilla 012 list was like, well, I now need to reserve 1 Swick and 32 points, I suppose.
Yes. Yep. So the first soft ARO we're going to be talking about is the corner guard. It's the classic. It's the warband at the corner. It's the auxiliary with the heavy flamethrower. It's the Liberto, the Moonraker, the Peacemaker. It's just something with a template that if you come around the corner, you got to make a choice on how you're going to deal with that template.
It could also include stuff like shotguns, even though they don't have templates now, in that they can position around a corner so that to engage them, you have to engage them at a very short range, where either they're auto hitting with a template or they've got a +6 on the shotgun, something where they get to watch this little tiny short range area that you position such that the opponent can't, either they don't go there or they have to deal with something at ideal short range.
Yep.
Honestly, even out to like 16, because shotguns, submachine guns, they're all zeros out to 16s.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Like, and very frequently, those things you'll be fighting do need to move out of cover to get those lines of fire on you. And I can count, there have been a ton of times where, like, I've had to move something out of cover to fight a random dude with a shotgun, and it's like, oh, you're on flats. Shit.
Yep. They do pretty much what it says on the tin. Like, Auxilla are some of the best units in the game right now. Libertos have been some of the best units in the game for a very long time. They're often very low investment, and against opponents that potentially don't have like the solutions like a sensor bot, or the table is really awkward and they have to deal with it, it can actually end up getting you more value than potentially like your typical hard ARO. Like if I drop a heavy flamethrower on like a Hadamoto and he just whiffs and dies, I go, oh my god, the potential there is incredible.
Goudan are definitely like maybe one of the best additions to a faction I've ever seen in my life.
Goudan are cooked.
Oh yeah.
Hey.
Along the lines of Moonrakers, where they cover part of the board that the faction previously just didn't get to engage with and had to work around.
Yep. Now they are just like, again, exactly the same way as Moonrakers. Well, I guess I need to reserve this many points because they're just too good.
Yep. And I suppose, I don't know about you guys, like obviously we've played against these units quite a bit. We kind of have plans to deal with it. If you don't necessarily have a plan on how to deal with Goudan or Moonrakers or something like that, oftentimes you default to the like, I'll just shoot it and hope I make the save. Or I'll shoot it and hope I win the face-to-face. which can be breeding grounds for disappointment.
Yeah.
Definitely look out for these. I think in NCA people are taking 3 or 4 auxilia per list, and I don't blame them.
No, auxiliary are some of the best because they're like zero cost as far as once you have your list made. They don't have an order tied to them, so if you lose them, it's just that one ARO corner, and your opponent has spent more orders to clear them than they ever generated because they don't generate orders.
Absolutely. Okie dokie. Something that is actually, funnily enough, going to get even better and more popular than it has been in the past. It is the zone of control AROs. We have things like jammers, hacking in general. So like Ghazi, Zulu Cobras, Hecklers, Repeaters. Ghazi, anytime you play against Vanilla Hark, you are probably playing against 4 of them now. Whether or not that's unfortunate or
especially
not.
if Saladin's there.
100%. They are incredible. The ability, it's almost like a corner guard that hits you before you hit the corner.
Oh no, yeah, it's a no line of fire corner guard.
Like 100% of the time too.
Yeah. Yep. It's some of the only ways to, probably, I'll say some, but there probably is the only way to ARO your opponent without line of fire.
That isn't hacking.
That isn't hacking.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is another great way. Like things like Flash Pulse bots are not just great because it's a MIM3 Flash Pulse. It's also great because if you force your opponent to fight it within 8, they are fighting a MIM3 Flash Pulse, and they are probably taking a Spotlight, or they're taking Oblivions and Carbonites. And it's the kind of the first aspect of the layering of the AROs.
Yeah, like playing Rama with 3 flash bots, that was like, I didn't put them up on ARO, but I put them prone in areas at the front of my deployment zone, and now I had a hacking net that ran across my entire deployment zone.
Yep. I think oftentimes hacking is kind of like you make or break by your projection, including your deployment zone projection. There are factions out there that only get 1 flash pulse spot, and that hurts them, but factions that get 3 or 2 flash pulse spots can really cover their entire DZ with even 1 hacker. And that 1 hacker might be enough to keep the vehicle from running through your DZ, or to potentially like spotlight a drop troop, or, you know, a whole number of things basically. But it's just the opportunity cost of having that flash pulse in multiple parts of the board is like, it increases as you get more, I suppose. The mines and mine-like models, Nick.
So mines are kind of one of the go-to soft AROs. We've also got some what I call mine-like models. So camouflage, have a template, behave very much like mines, except for you get a bottle afterwards.
Yeah.
So back to like the Gudon, getting some deployment outside your deployment zone, and when something goes near it, drop a template. Same with kind of chasseurs. They've got the flamethrower, so it's even worse than a mine because it has continuous damage.
One thing, go on.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one thing we haven't really mentioned is kind of the in-between models, which are going to be things like Camo Helots and like Longya. Kind of like these. I know the Helot has multiple dice, which is fair. Oh wait. Yes. Helot has multiple dice.
Yes, that is the entire Helot thing. Yes, they have multiple dice.
Yes.
Things like Longya, I know people are still really high on them because it still kind of fits into the delay tactic of you have to discover me, you have to do all this, and once you do discover me, you now have to fight me, and there is the opportunity cost there. That's kind of like the blend for me of a hard and a soft ARO. I'm kind of forcing you to deal with it. If you don't deal with it, I might get a shot at decent range bands. If you do deal with it, you could potentially waste a bunch of orders discovering it, or potentially, I take a single hit and make an armor save, that kind of thing. It's not quite a hard ARO though, but it's not quite a soft ARO.
Mhm.
There's too much gray area for
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, these are
yeah.
these aren't categories; they're more archetypes, and you can mix and
Yeah.
match to your heart's content.
Yes. Mines on the topic of mines are making a massive comeback realistically, with a bunch of units getting mine layer 2, and those mines being EM mines or cyber mines or
Mhm.
there's even a couple stun mines para mines out there.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, yeah, that's been a really nice change up. Mine layer 1 wasn't necessarily enough value, especially because the usual trade off was I pay Swick and I don't get a specialist. But now being able to have mine layer 2 more common, you can have one mine layer 2 and one specialist out there. And the variety of mines is also making it more interesting. I would almost say more fun to play against, because you have to consider what type of mines those might be, especially when you haven't seen the model that laid them yet.
Yep. All right, how do we make the most of a soft ARO? Well, you put it where your opponent wants to go. So you kind of map out in your head, if my opponent wants to get rid of my LT, I put my LT here, and I'm going to make sure that my opponent has to deal with this Gudand before it gets to the LT. What have you written, Nick? Change the table layout.
Yeah, so like you're modifying how your opponent has to interact with the table by putting hazards in places that make that no longer a viable route or a less viable route.
Yep.
One way you can look at it is like by changing the viability and the risk reward of different paths across the table, you can ideally make it so that your opponent's best choice is the one you want them to take.
Yep.
That makes it, I guess, getting more meta in this, but able to predict what your opponent is doing because you're changing the odds they have to weigh up to make that decision.
Yep.
And if you can weigh them correctly, you can push your opponent so that they are making their best decision, but you've made that coincide with what you want them to do.
Yep. It's that big brain stuff. All right. Moving on to strategies against the soft AROs. Number 1, avoid them. Oftentimes your opponent doesn't want to reveal them out of their optimal kind of interaction, whether it be I try to hit you with a heavy flamethrower. If you're not in the heavy flamethrower range, generally an opponent won't reveal it just to shoot a single SMG or pistol shot kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've kind of found that it's hard. If they're well placed, it's very hard to avoid them.
Yes, the better placed they are, the ideal, because it's a better position, then that means it's more difficult to go around them. It's going to cost more orders to go around them. But just like the hard AROs, it is something you have to weigh up.
Yep.
Like, is it the number of orders I will have to take to deal with these AROs? Is that going to be more or less than if I just spend the orders and walk the long way to where I want to go?
Yep. Using units that kind of counteract certain things. So a great example, as you've written, is Warhorse versus EM Mines. The entirety of Morats does not care for EM Mines and can simply run through them. Which is
woe be upon the vanilla Hackerslam player playing into Morats.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is also kind of a good point to kind of diversify in your soft AROs. So Like if you're taking EM mines, like a EM mine Shujay, maybe you want your second Shujay to be a regular mine, or maybe you want to take one that drops a viral mine, or because you kind of obviously Moratz is a very particular example. You can't rely on everything to do 100% of the job effectively.
Yeah, it's a particular example, but you need to plan for Morats in list construction because they are a very popular faction and they are very good in N5.
They've been good for a very long time.
Yep.
Using expendable units. Yep. We have a running joke at House of James where I throw Warcores at mines and somehow he lives through like 3 of them. And he keeps dodging and then keeps making armor saves. But yep, he's trying desperately to die, but the mines won't let him. But yes, the helper bots, a great example of just throwing stuff at mines. If your opponent happens to have 2 mines next to each other and you can pop 2 of them, that's even better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like if you don't expect them to if you don't expect them to survive, just move. Like trigger as many things as possible, and you might be surprised that they survive. But like if you trigger 1 mine and try to dodge on a model you don't care about losing, if you fail to dodge, you lose the model, and you've only cleared 1 mine. But if you move, and you trigger 2 mines, your odds of survival are worse, but you've guaranteed that you trigger both mines as opposed to taking the chance and having to spend extra order. So you've also cleared mines more order efficiently than your opponent could lay them.
Exactly. Yep. And then my absolute favorite, just tank it. This doesn't really work with EM mines because EM mines are absolutely cooked, but it just running a 2-wound dude at a shock mine and kind of ignoring it is perfectly reasonable.
Well, like I had a game, I think 2 weeks ago, where there was a shock mine covering a button, and I brought up a 2-wound specialist and like walked up to the button, and my opponent like, oh, the mine goes off. What would you like to do? Like I push the button.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? Like, yeah, I just push the button. Like, I might save, I might not, but I've got 2 wounds, so it doesn't matter for me pushing the button, and there's no other AROs covering this, so if I take a wound and I fail the roll, I just keep pushing the button. Like, it's more order efficient, and my orders are a more finite resource than my wounds at this point.
Yep. Absolutely. What do you do, Jordan? How do you deal with soft AROs?
It depends on what the ARO is. If it's a lot of camo markers, I'll generally try and figure out what is likely to be under a bunch of them and if I can sort of just play chicken. If it's stuff like mines and whatnot, like when I was playing Combined Army, I would usually just run something like a Gaki forward and because they move 6 inches, trigger a bunch of mines and dodge and sort of see what happens. Just in general, it's a case of it's all risk management. It's judging what you're willing to do to clear these AROs and how many orders you're willing to spend to do it, and if you can advance your own position while you're doing it. Like if you clear, 20 mines in a turn, but you do nothing else, you've wasted a turn essentially, because they're just going to put down a bunch more random deployable crap. But if you've cleared a bunch of mines and either killed 2 or 3 models or pushed 2 or 3 buttons, then it starts becoming you've now put the onus back on your opponent to not only reestablish their position with all of their junk, but they also need to advance the board state.
That's a great way to put it. It doesn't advance the board state for you in particular. And oftentimes if you take the risk and fail, you've put yourself behind because you've lost a model and they've lost a mine. But you might have spent 2 or 3 orders to get that mine to go off. All right.
And they most likely reloaded for free in the state space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing change of N5.
I think a number of times over at CanCon, my Gudon, they were like, oh, what does your Gudon do? And I'm like, he puts down a mine.
Yep. That was me with my Auxilia. It's BS10, it's Whip 11. Sure, it has a flash pulse. I go, you're shooting at me with 3 or 4 dice. Fuck it. I put down a deployable repeater, and then there's 6 deployable repeaters within 8 inches of this single auxiliary, and it's like, yeah, you can kill 1 repeater, but there's 5 more, and you're definitely not getting rid of those. All right, let's move on to the most criminally underrated type of ARO ever, and I can't believe a regular order put the K2 Auxilia as the worst HI in the game, when in fact...
You're going to be mad about this forever.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, and that's even worse. So, Nick, take us through the non-lethal AROs.
So, normally with a lethal ARO, you remove the opponent's ability to do stuff by removing the model from the table. With a non-lethal, you remove the opponent's ability to do stuff with their models by just turning them off. So basically, it's shutting down the ability of the model to spend orders, which means they can't attack, and under that means they can't push buttons. They're basically restricted to moving and dodging, or to moving, dodging, and resetting. And they're at a -3 to do anything that they can roll dice on that's not an armor save. So with non-lethals, we're looking at mostly isolated, immobilized of both flavors, and stunned. Especially when you get to turn 3, if you can stun an opponent's specialist in turn 3, that can be just as good as killing them.
Yep.
Or like if you can isolate their specialist during turn 3, they're not out of the order pool, they're not spending more orders. It doesn't matter how many orders your opponent has left if they don't have a specialist to spend it on. During turns 1 and 2, it can be a little bit more variable on how they compare in relative power to lethal AROs, because with a lethal ARO, you're removing that from the future turns order pools, and you're not with non-lethal. But in some ways, it can also force your opponent to spend more orders to recover them. So stun goes away at the end of the turn, but if your opponent needs that model this turn, they may end up having to drop Speedball and run another model up to unstun it. So they now lose the ability, even if that model later goes on to push the button, they've lost 3 or 4 orders that they could do stuff like shoot your models with or push a second button.
Yep.
If the model's isolated, yeah, it's generating 1 order, but it's not an order pool. And it's going to sit there in your opponent's head and try to figure out, can I recover this model? Because I really like it. I want to turn this heavy infantry specialist back on. I spent a lot of points on it, and it's still on the table. How do I get an engineer up? Do I speedball for that and not have speedball for recovery of hit points later? Sometimes they can end up making things more complicated and order intensive for your opponent than just removing it, so they don't have to think about that anymore.
Mm-hmm. In general, wounds are easier to get back than removing states. Because you can re-roll a failed wound roll. I don't think you can re-roll a failed states removal. I'm 90% sure on that.
One moment, please keep talking.
And as you mentioned, like turn 1, like yes, let's say the tag gets stunned. Generally, the tag shouldn't be the only thing your opponent can use. There should be ways of dealing with your hard AROs at the same time. But in turn 3, if I stun the guy you've just spent 5 orders on, that could be game. Like that just could be the game over. Even though I would have had to have dealt maybe 2 wounds to him with a lethal ARO in comparison. I think they're incredibly strong. EM in general is incredibly strong. And I think the big kicker, and we're kind of talking about it with TR bots before, generally non-lethal AROs are much cheaper. A K2 Auxilia is 2 effective wounds with remote presence. So if you want to kill it, you have to deal either 3 wounds to it in 1 order or 2 wounds in 2 orders. It only costs 12 points, and it can shoot paramines at your opponent. So I shoot a paramine at you. You have to deal 3 wounds to me to get me off the table. If you don't, the next time you activate, I'm flash pulsing you, and you're taking a paramine at the same time. So you decide you decide what you want to do there.
Well, your example with the first turn tag, there's in a good list, yes, there should be something else to spend those orders on in the tag's order pool. But usually that's your, like, if there's a tag in the pool and that's their turn 1 plan is to go shoot stuff with the tag, and that tag gets stunned, they may not have, like, their plan B for that order pool is not going to be as good as plan A. But also, a non-lethal ARO requires 1 failed save to nullify a tag for the turn.
100%.
It
There are,
takes
like,
3 failed lethal ARO saves to nullify a tag in 1 turn.
Yep.
There are like few feelings in Infinity more satisfying than hitting like a random flash pulse on like an important piece of the enemy's army, them failing the save, and then watching their face as they have to recalibrate their entire turn because of what just happened.
Yep.
Especially if the tag has already moved halfway up the table and then gets stunned.
Yep.
And they have to spend the orders to pull it back, even though it can't do anything about it. So suddenly, they're out 6 orders, and they haven't shot anything with their tag.
It is genuinely one of the funniest feelings in Infinity, where you're like, okay, like my turn's like my reactive turn's super easy, and your opponent's like, I have to think about every order for the rest of the turn now.
Well, like that's one thing I was enjoying with the Umbra.
Yep.
Every Umbra has a flash pulse, and they're all whip 14.
Yep.
And so, quite often, I would have opponents try to engage them at bad range bands for their rifles, and just ARO flash pulse on a 14.
Yeah, 100%.
And it doesn't always work, but if it works, like their piece is shut down for the turn. What's your plan B?
It can be incredibly devastating. I think we've all kind of had that experience where something gets stunned, something gets EM'd, and you're like, God damn, what do I do now? That might have been my only specialist. That's kind of one of the things I was struggling with NCA was my early lists, pretty much every specialist I had was hackable. It was either a hacker itself or it was a remote. And so if my opponent had a way to hit me with something before I got to the objective, I was just risking dice to do to do anything, versus if I just had a regular specialist that was immune to that, I could ignore that aspect of the game. So anything hacking related, non-lethal related, anything like...
To answer your question from earlier, cubes and remote presence only allow the whip reroll for healing and repairing. So you're correct.
Yep.
For clearing states, it's 1 chance per order.
So it's even bigger order sync. Yep. Yep. All right. No more slander for the non-lethal AROs. They are beautiful. And I think we're about to talk about the best non-lethal ARO in the game in a second. So that's okay. Do we have anything more to add? Or do we...
I think we've got examples on the next slide.
Oh, do we?
We've covered many of.
Okay, excellent. Yes.
Yeah. One here that we didn't mention is the EM guns. So like the emitter. I think the emitter,
Blitzen, acrolite cannon, all that sort of stuff. Adhesive launcher rifles.
Adhesive launcher rifle and emitter have both. They're both viable now, as opposed to N4 where they just worked. The emitter is an EM ammunition thunderbolt.
Yep.
Which means random models that have it can potentially be ARO pieces for across the board because they only go to zeros.
I think one of the best ARO pieces in the game right now is the Foot Montesa. It's a burst 3 Blitzen, or a 1+2 special dice Blitzen that will have 2 volleys, and it's only 20 points, and it's 4 armor and 2 wounds. And the
I was trying to figure out where you put that in, and I couldn't figure out why it was non-lethal. Okay.
Yeah, it's a burst 3 Blitzen in ARO. It's very, very linkable, and it's
hilariously linkable.
It's hilariously cheap at 20 points. It's effectively an EM TR bot where you spend 2 points and you get an extra wound, 4 armor, and CC skills, and it's a paramedic. And you can take 2 of them. There's no reason.
It's got Mim 3 still, doesn't it?
It is limited cover, so the Mim 3 kind of combines to make cover. There is no reason in my mind, if you're playing Varuna or even SAA, to not take 2 of them. They are insanely good, and as you say, you don't need to kill something to disable it or to make it effectively useless.
Cyberbinds are one thing we should probably make a note on, because they are comms attacks. Yes. Which means you don't dodge against them, you reset against them.
Yes.
And combining cyber mines in the same area that you have a mine that's not a cyber mine can lead to some really nasty forks where a dodge or a reset will not take care of all AROs.
Yep, and they're now effective against every type of model. If it's hackable, you get immobilized B, and if it's not hackable, you get stunned.
Yeah.
And it is PS5. It is better numbers than an average mine. I know that. I can't remember if it's AP or not, but it is definitely PS5.
Go ahead and continue. Sorry. Oh, sorry, mines. Oh, it is PS5. Yep.
It's not AP, is it?
No, but it's effectively DA because it's 2 saves. I didn't know that.
Yep.
It's PS5 and well, it's 2 saves, but it's not DA.
How does that work?
Basically, that means that if you ignore DA, you still take 2 saves.
That's ridiculous.
Because it has no ammunition type.
That's ridiculous.
Oh, I will have to remember that next time.
Anyway, Cybermines are good now.
Oh, yeah.
Cybermines are very good. All right. Now I can have my own little mini rant. Other AROs. The Puzzler. Yes, it has its own category. Is it the most powerful ARO unit in the game? For its cost, I'm going to say yes. Having a large EM template in hidden deploy in the center of the table, the ability to take 2 of them. They don't cost an order. They're also move 8, drop deployable repeater. They are bordering on absolutely broken, needs an immediate nerf. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but I just think they're nuts.
I would playing vanilla combined as opposed to next wave. I would put a little asterisk on that cost because vanilla does pay for them because we have to take a more expensive Dr. Worm who doesn't come with toys before we can buy them.
Yep.
But that said, they're still amazing. Even though I can only take one of them.
So I think the real interesting thing for me is I don't think they have a counter. And people go, oh, just censor it. Yeah, if you're in range to censor it, you're in range to be hit by it.
Unless you can censor it through a wall.
Yes, but you don't actually know where it is. So you are just guessing where it is. And
oh, yes, that's true.
Yeah, because it's hidden deploy. And even like as an ARO piece, yes, like I can reveal, I can drop a big EM template and hit 3 things in your link team. And you can dodge, you can do whatever. One of those things is failing, probably 100% of the time. If not, I'm also an 8-inch thing that moves forward and then drops a big EM template ahead of me. So it's not just like the best ARO piece potentially in the game for its points. It's just I do everything well. And it also seems like slightly not brain dead, but like your opponent really, really, really needs to think about how they're going to deal with them really hard. And you using them do not need to think about how to use them very hard.
It's a very simplistic play pattern that they have.
I think their toolbox is deeper than people give them credit for.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly because of the surprise attack neg6.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't apply to the Emerat since that's a template.
Yep.
But it applies to the Acrolite cannon, though I'm more interested in the stun pistol +1 burst.
Mm-hmm.
Because, BS12, surprise attack, neg6 on a burst 3 stun pistol. Presents a really awkward thing that your opponent wouldn't have seen coming. Especially if they're planning to, say, dodge an E-brand.
Let's just also ignore the fact that they're armor 3. They dodge better. Technically, you can over-infiltrate them. Which is kind of gross. They have mimetism. So if they start in cover and drop a template, you're probably hitting them on neg 3. And they're only 12 points. Why they are 12 points, I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, I'll give a question. What do you think of their second profile? The camouflage one use?
I would never take it.
Nope.
Never take it. It's like, again, the Swiss Guard is so strong because you don't know where it is.
Mm-hmm.
If the Swiss Guard lost hidden deploy, but was still a camo marker, it's incredibly obvious what it is, and it feels a lot more fair.
Yep.
This is exactly the same thing. Like, there is 2 large EM templates somewhere in the middle of the table that I have to dance around, and I'm not playing Ariadna, so what do I do? Like, sure, you can dodge. Dodge doesn't solve the problem.
The other thing that the Puzzler hidden deployment gives, and I didn't play against them, but I think there was at least one person at CanCon who was running it, and that is a gearhead with Cyberplug naked.
Yep. You can fake them out.
So they ran a gearhead with
easy.
Cyberplug. I think they ran a second gearhead with Cyberplug that was running 2 Ranters. And then one that looked like it was running 2 Puzzlers, but wasn't running anything.
Yep. I despise them with every fiber of my being. I don't know, people will probably disagree with this. Maybe it's because they have more bad experiences with Swissels. But I think these are more egregious
gun
than
is more
Swissels.
scary than non-gun.
Sure.
Like, you're never going to be able to convince, I think, people at large that, like, Puzzlers are better than a Swissel, just because of, like, what the Swissel does represent. But on average, I wouldn't be surprised if Puzzlers overall performed better than a Swiss Guard over, like, a number of games.
I think so. I think on average they would.
They attack the opponent in different ways.
Yeah.
So the Swistle is going to be covering lanes of approach, but its first shot is still just going to be an attack against something on the other side of the board because it's a missile. If it waits until it gets halfway up the field, it's fighting at 0 range band, which, given its BS 15, so 0 range band isn't horrible. Whereas the Puzzler, it can have its first ARO being dropping the EM template on the specialist who just touched the button.
Or is about to touch the button. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Or the vehicle that's about to enter your DZ, or the tag that's running across, or anything. The thing is, I think it's so strong because EM is so strong. And EM effectively working against everything except Morats. Like, even against Morat, like, the Puzzler's worst case scenario is against Morats, and even then, I think it's still just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. The EM still turns off their heavy infantry, but their heavy infantry usually isn't that far up the board.
Yeah.
At
worst, it becomes a portable repeater or a real strong surprise attack, glue or stun gun, which feels fair for 12 points.
It does have a para neg 6 CCW, so it could theoretically stack surprise attack and the CC attack neg 6. It's only CC 15, but it could walk into something and say neg 12 on your CC attack. I'm looking for a 15. And if I fail, you get paralyzed.
That's ridiculous.
That
is ridiculous. Anyways, okay. That's a little rant about puzzlers. They are incredibly strong. They are overtuned. They do not need nearly as much as what they have for 12 points. I understand they require a gearhead and all that, or a cyberplug and all that kind of stuff. But
there is one thing to note on them. They do not have remote presence.
No, they don't. They are pretty much one and done.
So, yeah, they've only got one unconscious state. But that said, you're right, they still armor 3 BTS 6.
They are armor 3 BTS 6. Which is, again, why they're not 0-0. Anyway, probably the best 12 points you can spend in the game. And I'd endeavor to put 2 in every list if I was trying to win. Okie dokie. Let us move on to the shell game. Camo in ARO. So, this is something that we can lightly touch on. Honestly, Camo deserves its own episode and maybe a whole half episode in deployment about Camo. In general, camouflage in ARO, as Jordan kind of said earlier, is a game of chicken. Your opponent wants you to reveal, and you want to wait until the last possible moment to reveal. The more you reveal, the more obvious it becomes what is what, and as soon as your opponent gets a vague idea of what camo markers are what, they will get a lot more comfortable with what they are doing. So I think the real strong camouflage players blend the mines, the decoys, the lethal AROs like the Tank Hunter, the Spetsnaz, that kind of thing, Vasily. They blend them together so that you have to second guess yourself, and you default to the safe play most of the time, which is getting your opponent orders without even sacrificing like discovers at that point. I kind of think I just read out the slide.
Yep, you're all good.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how much to put on this, and I think you hit it quite well with it's hard to really touch on this without doing a full dive into how camouflage works and how you play with camouflage on the table. During deployment, you're doing more of the shell game of Is it a model? Is it a mine? Is it a decoy? And that can make your opponent either overly cautious and spend more orders than they need to, or under-cautious and eat a missile or a tank hunter portawala cannon. As the game gets going, that information gap is lost because you've revealed them. You can, however, still try to spend orders to force your opponent to discover and therefore spend orders. But that, unless you're doing coordinated orders, that's typically going to just be a 1-for-1 and only works if you're already ahead.
I think the best thing I could do at CanCon with the Ulhan was put it in camo. Even if it was in a very aggressive spot, and you could put it in well, you couldn't put it in suppressive fire, but if you could do something else with it, if you could, whatever else. The best thing I could do with it was put it in camo. My opponent then decides to either try and discover it, go nuts, or as soon as an opponent does a move discover, I feel like I've already made my order back for the camouflage. There's a 50-50 chance effectively that they're going to discover it or not discover it. And I go, great, I will do nothing. And then if they discover it, suddenly there's a big ARO piece in their face. If they don't discover it, they have to leave the cover to either do what they want or try and find another piece to discover it again and hopefully pass.
Yes.
And then they're like, oh no. This is why I think people like Longya as well. Discover is not a good long-range skill.
No.
And Camo Helots is probably another good one, because Discover having a 0 range band to 32 is basically saying you're going to be on neg 3 all the time. And if that has mimetism, you're on neg 6. And you're like, that's just not great. Very easily.
Camo Helots are just deeply unpleasant to deal with.
Yes. So for other things like impersonation, this is a real newbie buster. Impersonation can be incredibly strong. It can start anywhere on the table effectively with a dice roll. Just if you have a plan of a reserve drop in your head, either make the reserve drop the thing your opponent wants to kill, or make it something that is going to force that impersonator to only have one shot at killing something. So something that deploys a mine, something that deploys a crazy koala, something that can drop a template or can attempt to discover it multiple times for free, I think is really good. Again, impersonators sometimes are just kind of bullshit. And then the only other thing I'll mention is kind of like the camo v camo interaction very heavily favors the active player, because the second player can choose to delay, which is effectively foregoing their ARO. They can keep moving, or they can choose to discover, in which case they get shot for free and reveal themselves. So in a camo v camo engagement, generally the active player is ahead, and fighting camo with camo is actually worse than if you just dodged, revealed yourself, and then tried to fight the camo with your revealed model effectively. So yeah, don't fight camo with camo in the active turn. Oakley dokily. It's time to talk about the layers, the layering of the AROs. So, Nick, take us through. I think you wrote most of this.
Yeah, I think we pretty much each wrote a slide on this one. For looking at how you're deploying AROs and layering them. So with face-to-face AROs, I like to try to space mine so that once my opponent has cleared one ARO, they can't use their full move before they have to engage the next ARO. So that way, for instance, if they engage and clear an ARO, but they only get to move 3 inches, and now they have to engage the next ARO, that's 1 inch of lost movement, which is a quarter of an order. So it's making even their first half of their order inefficient now.
Mm.
It is important to mind your range bands. Kind of touched on this a bit with the TR bots of trying to deploy so that you don't give yourself bad range bands. So limiting your lines of fire with terrain so that over your good range bands, there's nothing that can get line of fire to you. They have to engage you from within your good range bands. Additionally, when you're looking at longer range AROs, try to figure out where like the primary region on the board is that you intend to use it to fight. And get your range bands so that it covers that area. So I'm thinking more like missiles for this one, because missiles are one of the more awkward long-range arrows, just because it takes 24 inches before they get a good range band. So to cover a specific spot on the board, you might need to set it obliquely to it to get enough range to that area rather than putting it too close, and now where you want to shoot it is not in a good range band. With layering mines, the goal is to try to not allow your opponent to set off more than one mine with one order. Cyber mines aside.
Yeah.
So trying to make it such that they can't do what we talked about earlier of running a model and just setting off your minefield.
A really good way to do that for beginners is to have, if you have a mine layer 2, have each mine on a different layer or a different level of terrain. So if you have one on the ground floor and one on a building that potentially has a bridge that goes somewhere, it's a very easy way to guarantee that your opponent won't be able to pop both mines in a single order unless they do something crazy like super jump up and like do something ridiculous. But yeah.
Another way you can do it is deploy one mine on either side of a building.
Yep.
So they don't overlap. They may be close, but they don't overlap lines of fire.
Yep.
Neither of them can see the same area of the board. This way, because even if your opponent is dodging the mines, they still make one dodge roll no matter how many mines they set off. So the risk reward for them doesn't change much between dodging 1 and 7 mines.
Yep.
They're still likely dead if they fail, and it's the same odds to succeed. If you can space the mines out more, then you can force them to move, dodge, move, dodge, move, dodge. And any of those failed dodges will kill the model. It also means that now your order efficiency of 1 order to lay the mine is at least matched by their 1 order to clear the mine.
Yep. With the added risk.
Yes, with the added risk that laying the mine, the risk is I fail, and the risk on setting off the mine is I die. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Here's a couple things that I wrote down. Force your opponent to break stealth under your repeater net. This is a great thing for things like flash pulses, as we talked about before, or for things like if you put a mine that's going to pop next to a deployable repeater. You force your opponent to break stealth, even if it's for a spotlight. It's another little thing that your opponent needs to worry about in future turns and can flip certain fights in your favor. Consider what your opponent's goals are. So as we kind of mentioned before, think about when your opponent's deploying, what are they going to want to spend their orders on and what's kind of their objective. Once you can kind of imagine that they want to take this Harris, they want to do this, they want to do that, you can get a lot more comfortable deploying a little bit more aggressively in other parts of the table that you don't think your opponent's going to necessarily go for. And that might give you a little leg up in turns 2 and 3, where you don't have to spend 4 or 5 orders to get this one dude all the way from the back of your DZ or something like that, or, you know. And then we're talking about layering. Layering is another complicated topic that could probably get its entire video by itself. I'll just say the easiest way to layer AROs is to use hidden deployment, and then something like a TR bot or a war core or something that your opponent goes, oh yeah, I'll shoot at that. And then all of a sudden they've got 2 things shooting at them, potentially 3 to 5 dice, and they go, it could end very, very badly. And
I would suggest as well, on the topic of layering, don't try and line up your AROs. Like, don't try and put a trooper behind another trooper, because 9 times out of 10, your opponent is just going to be able to slice the pie to shoot one before the other. You need to be precise on a level that is above what pretty much anyone can do, and it's generally just not worth it. Because again, Infinity is a game where, like, someone says, I will slice the pie, and 9.5 times out of 10, they're going to be able to do that. And there isn't a lot you get to do about that.
yeah, generally layering AROs is layering a hard and a soft ARO almost. So if you want to peek this thing, you have to be in this repeater. If you want to peek this thing from this angle, you get hit by a mine, or there might be, you might have to risk smoke from someone else or a dodge or something like that. Like, very often or not, it's not I'm getting shot at by 2 big weapons. It's I'm peeking this big weapon, but to do it, I'm having to take a spotlight save or something like that. Or even a dodge from a little bot or something like that. Or like something putting down an extra mine. Okie dokie. This is something I added last minute because it was probably important. It's the new radial deployment zones. So, corner to corner. For those who didn't know, a 4x4 foot board corner to corner is slightly less than 68 inches. Your deployment zones are 24 inches, which means that there is a 20-inch gap between deployment zones. And you will note that that is smaller than a regular standard deployment zone, which means that while there is more area around you to not necessarily play with, but have nothing in almost, the closeness between your DZs is smaller, which means things like Achilles, vehicles, Hatamoto will start closer than they did before. And all your units are bundled, I find, are bundled more closely than a standard 12-inch DZ. Any thoughts?
Yeah, because with a 20-inch gap, that means you're 10 inches from the midline. So forward deploy 8 almost gets you to the midline at the closest point.
Yeah, it's insanely good.
I'm really enjoying radial deployments once I figured out how to make tables that work for radial deployment. It opens up many different options, especially for like AROs. One model type that I never saw a use for was the infiltrating multi-sniper. But with radial deployment, you can now put an infiltrating multi-sniper in one of the 2 corners, or the 2 neutral corners. You've used your infiltrate. You're quite a ways away from the enemy models as far as their ability to counter, like, get up you and, like, close combat you. But you have good range bands on the entire board.
Yep.
Like, their entire deployment zone is a good range band.
Yep. On that note, things like ablative AROs in general, since you're not covering a strip, you can layer ablative AROs like jammers, mines, and bots are way better in compensation for being closer to your opponent. So, things like repeaters, since repeaters emit a circle and a radial deployment is effectively a quarter of a circle, you can cover a lot more of your DZ with just a hacker and a single flash pulse rather than
Yep.
you need 3 flash pulses to cover your entire DZ and stuff like that. There's less space to angle in or kind of sneak behind, but at the same time, you have to understand that you're almost, this is going to be weird, but you're almost playing a game of League. There's almost like 3 lanes. There's like straight ahead, there's left and right. Drop troops and impersonators have way more table space in general, but less deployment contact space, if that kind of makes sense. I don't really know how to describe it. You're spread out way more thin versus a radial deployment, and an infiltrator kind of can be way more area of the table, but kind of less space to get into your DZ.
Yeah, there's more potential entry points for a parachutist, but those entry points can be much farther away from the DZs and are typically going to be less dense as far as other models because they're concentrated in the other corners.
Yep, absolutely.
I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I'll take it. And obviously, I've found that radial deployments just have while they have short range fights, they also have more long range fights, I feel. Depending on how the table's kind of built, you can have sniper battles that go beyond 40, 48 inches quite often, to be honest.
Yeah, there's potential for the X-Visor missile launcher outranging the sniper rifle. One can dream.
Yes, I think the only other thing, like, obviously, AROs aside, like, you'll find that you're often further away from the objectives that isn't the middle one in a radial deployment. You kind of, the risk at having a mid-range, like a trooper in the midfield, like your infiltrating sniper that potentially is a specialist, that dying, like, it's like 3 or 4 orders to get there versus the typical, like, 2 orders from any part of the strip of your traditional 12-inch DZ. Anyway, it's good
Actually,
to...
for AROs...
Go on.
With AROs and radial deployment, one thing I have noticed is because... So if you've got 3 objectives spread out on the midline, the center one is fairly normal. It plays very much like you would for rectangular deployment. But the 2 that are on the side play quite differently because you're not running toward the opponent. You're running across their field. Running toward the opponent is much easier to minimize ARO exposure.
Yep.
But if you have to run laterally across your opponent's deployment zone to get to the one on the side, there's a lot more places that your opponent can put AROs and cut your movement as you try to get across that space.
Yep, 100%. How have you found radial, Jordan?
Once I actually deployed on radial a couple of times, I started liking it a lot more than I thought I would. I was definitely initially one of those people that thought it was going to be a net negative for the game, but I've come around on it. I think it adds like a nice new axis to play the game on, which is good. And I think once people sort of figured it out, it got a lot easier. And I've enjoyed the way it's changed the game, especially the missions it's used in, like placing your own zones in area of interest and provisioning adds a really cool spin on things.
Yeah, I find it akin to the QAZ in the sense that the QAZ forced you to take different tools to deal with it. Radial almost feels the same, where you have to prioritize different tools in this deployment to get maximum effect.
And CB figured out that the way to get people to stop avoiding placing down circular templates was to make them a part of the mission.
Yes. Okie dokie, let's move on to some common ARO mistakes. Understanding your opponent's outs. This is a big one. You'll find that the really good players will start their turn. They'll understand what you need to do and how to prevent you from doing that. And as kind of Jordan said before, the real thing that's happening nowadays is the threshold for an ARO piece on turn 3 is, does it have a gun? So stand all those guys up. Realize that you can freely spend your ARO resources whenever is necessary on like a turn 3 push or whatever. Don't always be shooting. If you have something like a Gudin, if you have something like a Liberto that you know is probably just going to die, just go, that's fine, I'm not going to risk that. I'm just going to place down a mine. Or I'm going to throw smoke on a model that you potentially might want to kill in the next order. And then you've still gotten some value out of that, instead of going, ooh, there's a 10% chance I, win this face to face, and then your whole thing stopped and you go, yeah.
This is one of the tougher lessons to learn, of identifying when you need to say the model is a loss and it will do more to my opponent to put a mine down than it will to try to face it. Because if you know they're going to lose the face-to-face and die, then your opponent has removed them in one order. If you put a mine down, now your opponent has to spend another order to deal with that mine on top of the order they spent to kill their model.
Absolutely. Don't put down 15 prone markers for 15 troopers. Very often, if you're playing against a faction that has drop troops or parachutist troops or parachutist deployment zone troops, if you have a guy behind a building that if your opponent peeks the building, he's going to be seen anyway, there's not really much practical use to have him prone, and potentially he might see over small barriers, he might see over a small box to catch a drop troop or a parachutist DZ troop. You're just covering more of your DZ. You have to actually think, why am I putting this guy prone? Does it do anything to protect him? Potentially not. And does it cover my DZ more? Because if you have 15 prone troops, half of them on buildings, I can almost guarantee that there would be a way to get into that DZ with a parachutist or a drop troop. And I feel like a lot of people default to teaching new players just make everything prone. Because it's easy.
So actually, don't stand up yet. This is more for player 1 deployment. If you've got a piece that is both an ARO and an active gun, or part of a link that wants to move, don't necessarily just default to standing that model up. Because if you do, your opponent can potentially counter-deploy multiple models looking at it. So that now, if you want to activate that model, you immediately take multiple AROs from guns that your opponent has selected to fight against that model.
Seen people do it all the time. And it's especially prevalent with tags, because tags can't go prone. They go, I'm going to use this tag. I put it at the front of my DZ behind a barrier so I know it's in cover. Then your opponent counter deploys, 2 HRLs staring right at it, and there was already like a flash pulse looking at it or something, because that's what you want to shoot with it. Then you go, oh goddamn, well, I have to now use something else to try and get rid of one of them, and then maybe I can fight the other 2. Yeah, it gets awkward. Just, yeah. I find that in the first turn, any ARO piece that I'm not activating, that can stand up, sure, because that's an ARO piece. If I am going to activate a model, I may as well have it prone.
Yes. Yeah.
This next one's very funny because it's happened to me many times. If, for example, your Blackfriar is the only counter to a potential Tusa or Atalanta, don't just default to putting it on ARO duty. Because if it dies, then how are you going to kill Tusa or Atalanta?
Especially those 1 wound pieces as well.
Yes. Yeah, you have to recognize in every game there are going to be pieces that do more and do less. A Black Friar against some factions, like let's say some Huck factions, like it is basically just a BS13 dude at that point. Like if there's no MSV, if there's no real mimetism, you can't smoke shoot with it. It's just a BS13 dude. And then sure, whatever, have it on ARO, that's fine. But if you're playing against Chusa and you go, oh, I don't have anything that's really going to hit Chusa except this Black Friar, you kind of need to prioritize the Black Friar and potentially have something else on ARO. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, more on. He just shut his camera off for a moment.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess kind of going off of that one on using the correct tools for the job, but this is more about order efficiency. So a model that is in the right place may be able to take a mediocre fight against the ARO, but it'll have to spend several orders to clear that ARO. Balance that against how many orders would it take to reposition the correct model that I really want to put into this face-to-face fight to take on that ARO. Because if it's going to take 3 or 4 orders for your, it's in my favor, but it's not ideal, face-to-face to clear an ARO, but it'll take 2 orders to move another piece there and 1 order to fight it, that you can be relatively sure will put it down in 1 order. That's a more sure set of odds to play with instead of I'm gonna throw a bunch of coin tosses and hopefully it'll work out in approximately 3 to 4 orders.
You might get to that point in a game where you feel like you need to take risks, but you don't need to take risks immediately, and you certainly don't need to take risks when you have a better option, like very predominantly available. I think people glamorize the perfect turn or something like that. Like, you know, I had maximum efficiency, I killed this in a single order, I did all this. Generally, you're going to lose, like your turn's going to be considered kind of a failure if your opponent gets you to take those really awkward, risky fights, because eventually one of them's not going to go your way, and you're going to have to spend the orders with the other trooper anyway to deal with the same problem. You don't need, I think in your first turn, I think people underestimate, you don't actually have to kill that much. It's less about how much you kill and what you kill, I find. You can kill 2 to 3 troopers in your first turn. If they're important troopers, then your opponent's going to feel that way more than if you killed a flash pulse, a war call, and a baggage bot, or an evo bot, or even a plane hacker or something like that. Like, that's fine, you've gotten rid of 3 orders, but then your opponent still has all of their SWIC, all of their attack pieces.
Unless your opponent is playing limited insertion, just killing warm bodies in that first turn generally doesn't do that much. Like, unless you are specifically targeting down one group, like if you kill 3 troopers or 4 troopers from your opponent's group too, you have effectively gimped that group. But it is really hard to do that because your opponent isn't incentivized to deploy all of their group 2 models in a convenient clump for you.
Yep. And then finally, count your shots. Understand the limitations of your disposable weapons, especially things like Blitzens and Panzerfaust. Understand that you're going to have 2 shots. What are you going to do after those 2 shots happen? Is it realistically plausible that your opponent can only really face it twice? Or are you just going to kind of dodge, pray that 3 orders or 4 orders is enough orders wasted, and kind of drop prone, like the Foot Montesa or a Lasik or something like, or not a Lasik, a Shujay or something like that.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind.
The Foot Montesa is super obnoxious for it because it's a pain to kill after it's out of those weapons as well.
Yes. Yep. Okie dokie. It's time. We're going to end on some tips, some tricks, and some hacks that I wrote 5 minutes before we recorded. So,
Hell yeah.
if you suspect you are facing against a reserved impersonator, hold back a unit. I think I've already mentioned this. Hold back a unit that you can either body block or aggressively force them to reveal prematurely.
There are few feelings in the game more satisfying than blocking Bob from accounting in a fucking corner with a mine and a Libertos.
Not everyone has access to that. You kind of just have to make it really awkward for your opponent to use the impersonator. If they decide to go round, let's say your opponent spends 5 orders and then kills like an attack piece. You go, yeah, they've lost the ability to do that again. They've spent 5 orders and they've lost a trooper of their own, which is going to generate 2 orders futurely. You just have to make it as awkward as possible because generally impersonators are going to kill something regardless.
Unless they have deployed very badly and you have got the hardest of hard reads, the impersonator is generally going to take something with it before it dies.
Yep. Using mine dispensers and perimeter weapons are excellent ways to fork tough paces. So again, we're going to keep mentioning Tusa because he's an absolute brick to get through, and the Swistle. But things like the new Black Hearts with viral mine dispensers, things like Dynamo, anything that's going to get you effectively free hits or turn the face-to-face roll into a non-risk to you is a win. And the fact that mine dispensers are really so order efficient because they shoot both their shots in the same order is very, very good. I've been at the mercy of mine dispensers a lot from Black Hearts as of late. If your opponent leaves their attack piece standing with expectations to use it, cover it with multiple AROs. We mentioned that before. Don't leave the piece you're going to use standing up in the middle of the open, ready for your opponent to put something in front of it. Common sense. Remember that all models in a fire team activate at the same time. If your opponent only has one specialist in that link, then perhaps it is the better target. I think we see this quite often. You overextend or you have to do something. I go to shoot you. I shoot the guy behind you that's a doctor. Wait, what? And then he dies, and you go, oh, I can't do the mission anymore. Great.
Yep.
Getting familiar with the dice calculator. If you gain an understanding of basic odds, it's going to help you to prevent making mistakes and recognize when your opponent has made one. So if you can kind of look at, I want to kill this with this guy from here. If that's in 24, I'm going to be on 14s and you're going to be on 12s. What are the odds for that kind of thing? You kind of do in your head because then eventually you sit there and go, oh yeah, he does have, if this is above 24, I am going to be on 8s and he's going to be on 12s. That's probably not a good idea. Positioning is key. The prime real estate for your LT might be better served given to the ARO model. Prioritize accordingly. I don't know about you guys, but when I deploy, I deploy the stuff I don't care about first in spots that are kind of like whatever. And I think I find ARO pieces are kind of more important to me. If someone can get into my DZ and kill my LT, I've kind of messed up anyway. Like if I flipped the roles, it's like the LT is probably dead anyway, because there's probably no AROs looking out to stop it regardless. I don't know about you guys.
I tend to deploy my forward deploying stuff first, because that tends to be just way easier to deploy.
That's true.
And then it will literally be deploying things in like batches of like 3 with stuff that is intended to ARO being deployed like later.
I tend to start by deploying my specialists based on who is most likely to go to which button.
Yep.
And then deploying their support. So mostly that's like HackerNet, making sure I've got board edges covered if necessary with Flashbot. Then it's usually finding the ARO lanes that I want to cover the most. So approaches to buttons or the ideal paths out of their deployment zones. And after that, then typically it's baggage after that to make sure that anything that needs to be reloaded is reloaded. And then lieutenant wherever is most convenient after that. Because usually I can get, even if it's a grunt lieutenant, like on the stairs behind where the ARO is, because then at least it's watching the back of the ARO piece.
Yep. Get used to the idea that anything you put on ARO will more than likely perish. The aim of the game is to delay your opponent. It's just a good rule of thumb to assume that everything you put on ARO is going to die. It gives you fair expectations as to what to expect of your further turns and how many orders and how much resources you're going to have. And it will save you from the disappointment when you think, oh, I put all this stuff up on ARO, like you put too much up on ARO, thinking some of it's going to live, then all of it dies. And you go, oh no, I've lost half my army in my reactive turn because I was a bit too gung-ho with letting my opponent just spend their entire order pool killing everything turn 1, and then turn 2 and 3 is when they kind of lock me to my DZ and then do the mission kind of thing. Okie dokie, ladies and gentlemen. We know this has been a bit of a ramble, a bit of a longer episode, a bit of a talking about everything. Thank you for listening if you have been. This has been a very, very basic look at AROs because it is an incredibly complicated topic. It's almost like talking about list building as a whole in a single episode. The ARO is like half of the
next
game.
Back to Basics episode in list building.
No. I promise the next Back to Basics episode will be tight, concise, and
this was tight and concise. There's just a lot to go through.
Yeah.
Well, as a tight and concise topic.
Sure.
It made me feel good about myself. If you've listened to the whole thing, thank you very much. Again, if you'd like to support us, Patreon, Baron of Dice. If you have any ideas for Back to Basics or topics you'd like to learn about, please comment below. Comment below anyway, because we like comments. I think this is the first time I've said it, but please subscribe to the channel because we love numbers going up and it gives us the motivation to continue to make these episodes. So, thank you very much for listening. Do we have any final thoughts?
Learn how to ARO.
Practice. Honestly, practice.
Yeah.
Practice with the same list. You'll learn the capabilities of certain units, and units are so transposable in Infinity, it's not funny. Like,
do as I say, not as I do.
This MSV1 sniper is pretty much as good as this other MSV1 sniper because they're the same unit with the same stats and the same general equipment.
There's a lot of like
functionally
transposable aspects.
Yes. It's another thing that makes Infinity excellent is all the factions share the same rules. So there's no confusing parts.
If this was 40k, every faction would have a different word for mimetism.
Yes. All right. I've been Tristan.
I've been Nick.
And I've been Jordan.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.